This is the Uplink Marketing Podcast, and in this episode, I'm going to talk through 5 thoughts on marketing and being in the midst of coronavirus. I've talked about it several times here in these podcasts, but it's worth mentioning again. Moving from the known to the unknown is a part of every journey, and the feelings that come along with it can cause some uneasiness. We are currently in the transition from known to unknown. As much as we trust and turn to the predictions of mathematicians and scientists, the best they can give us right now is a probability, which inherently implies unknown. May you face the unknown of this world with courage and bravery, living well and helping those among you on the journey. A quick note before I jump into the 5 thoughts on marketing in the midst of coronavirus. Everything we do is marketing. In the office, out of the office, communication with customers, communication with coworkers, whether it's called a marketing campaign or not. Seth Godin, the guys from Basecamp that wrote Rework, and other great businesses have helped me understand the value of this idea. With that being said, these 5 thoughts are not only thoughts on marketing, but thoughts on how to act and react during this time. My hope is that I'm able to look back on this episode with a grateful heart that things weren't as bad as they seemed. Whether it's as bad as you think it is or better than you think it is, I believe these thoughts will be helpful as you engage with other humans. Thought number 1, be sensitive. We've had some great examples of how to handle this one wrong in the last few days. Cue coronavirus positive NBA player Rudy Gobert touching all the mics at a press conference, and some great examples of how to approach this well. Coors pulled some of their ads for March Madness promoting their beer as the official beer of working from home, and Hershey's pulled some of their ads with people hugging and giving handshakes. There's probably a line somewhere that separates being sensitive from being overly sensitive, but it seems to me that the line is very blurry. It would be tough to be overly sensitive at this time before we have an accurate picture of how bad things could really get. A lot of the time, taking 5 minutes to think about how things could be perceived before taking action can save people and businesses from looking insensitive. Think about the people who are genuinely scared right now. Think about the people who are at highest risk for catching the virus. Is what you are saying loving and compassionate? So, let's just do that. Take 5 minutes to think about your messaging and communication before speaking, and I think you'll be just fine. This leads right into my second thought. Encourage thoughtfulness and compassion. In times of uncertainty, our bodies and brains are biologically designed to self-preserve and move quickly without thought. This isn't a bad thing, but it doesn't serve us in the same way it did before the 1800s. As we continue to evolve and live in highly populated, functioning societies, we'll need to learn to fight some of these self-preservation impulses and think about putting others before ourselves. How can you encourage thoughtfulness in your messaging? How can you foster compassion among your coworkers and customers? Oftentimes, it's in our best interest to put others' needs above our own. A little altruism goes a long way in times like these. We are all in this together. Thought number 3, check your motivations. Are you looking to help others in a meaningful way or just make another buck? In times like these, it's good to take a step back and ask ourselves why we do what we do. Hopefully this question is not an easy one to answer and causes some time of reflection. When faced with the choice between negative economic impacts or negative health impacts for the community, which will you choose? Motivations are tricky when we're transitioning from known circumstances to unknown circumstances. The more practice we have with this transition, the more comfortable we are with them, even though they may not get easier. When you find fear bubbling up, ask yourself what it means to, in the words of Cynthia Bourgeault, just let the fear come up and fall through it to the other side. Thought number 4, double check how you are motivating others. Fear goes a long way when it comes to getting people's attention. Fear doesn't go a long way when it comes to handling a crisis well. Double check, or better yet, triple check, how you are motivating others to action in this time. Fear will present itself on its own, and it doesn't need our help. Encourage others. Build others up. Motivate others to have courage. Motivate your family to be brave. Motivate your friends to have compassion. Be a source of positive energy and share that energy with the world. Thought number 5, get creative. Creativity loves constraints, and there are a lot of new constraints being introduced right now. Here are some thoughts on sparking creativity during this time. Find new ways to solve an old problem. Search for answers in places you haven't looked in a while. Spend time thinking instead of doing when there isn't anything that can be done. Soak up the unexpected time at home with your family. Create new games. Learn something new about each other. Ask questions. Seek answers. Look at the stars tonight instead of watching the news. What do you feel? Why do you feel that? When you see someone at the store, try to feel what they are feeling based on their facial expressions and body posture. What reasons could they have for feeling that way? I'm so excited to see the creative solutions to problems that will come out of this time of constraint. To end the podcast today, I'd like to leave you with a little benediction inspired by one of my favorite podcasters, Rob Bell. Friends, may you go into the world with eyes wide open. May you look on others with compassion and motivate them to stand tall in this time of uncertainty. May you look within and find the courage to leap into the unknown, realizing that whatever it is within you has been there guiding you all along. This is another little bonus thought to end the podcast with if you've stayed listening after the music. I really like spiritual practices. They're very meaningful to me, and in times like these, we have an opportunity to practice our spirituality in new and different ways. Currently, I'm reading a book by Cynthia Bourgeault called The Wisdom Way of Knowing, and what I read today seemed very timely and relevant to what I was talking about in this podcast. So I wanted to add a little spiritual practice of surrender to the end of this podcast. And I'm going to read out of this book, The Wisdom Way of Knowing. I'm going to read one paragraph, and it is kind of the introduction to the spiritual practice, and I hope you get out of it as much as I have. And after I finish this paragraph, that will officially be the end of this episode. This is from Cynthia Bourgeault's Wisdom Way of Knowing, page 74. Although there are any number of spiritual practices, both ancient and universal, to bring a person to the state of permanent inner yieldedness, the most direct and effective one I know is simply this. In any situation in life, confronted by an outer threat or opportunity, you can notice yourself responding inwardly in one of two ways. Either you will brace, harden, and resist, or you will soften, open, and yield. If you go with the former gesture, you will be catapulted immediately into your smaller self, with its animal instincts and survival responses. If you stay with the latter, regardless of outer conditions, you will remain in alignment with your innermost being, and through it, divine being can reach you. Spiritual practice, at its no-frills simplest, is a moment-by-moment learning not to do anything in a state of internal brace. Bracing is never worth the cost. This does not necessarily carry over into an outer state of surrender or rolling over and playing dead. On the contrary, interior surrender is often precisely what it makes it possible to see a decisive action that must be taken and to do it with courage and strength. To ski down a hill or split a piece of wood, you first have to relax inwardly. Only then can you exert the right force and timing. It's exactly the same in the emotional world. Whether it's a matter of holding your ground in a dispute with your boss, handling a rebellious teenager with love, or putting your life on the line for an ideal you believe in, like Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr. Action flows better when it flows from nonviolence. That is, from a place of relaxed inner opening.